I stood on that perfectly manicured lawn, the winter wind whipping around me as the sound of helicopter blades cut through the stunned silence. My son Quentin's mouth hung open like a broken door hinge. His wife Candace had gone pale as fresh snow. And me? I just smiled and waved goodbye as I walked toward that beautiful custom helicopter, its black and gold paint gleaming in the December sun. But let me back up, because you need to understand how I got to that moment. Before we continue, please comment below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 1,000 subscriber milestone. My name is Willa Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. For the past 15 years, since my husband Raymond passed, I've lived a quiet life in a small house on the south side of Detroit. To my son and his family, I was just poor old Mama Willa, scraping by on Social Security, driving a beat-up 2008 Toyota Corolla, shopping at thrift stores, and bringing homemade sweet potato pies to family dinners because I supposedly couldn't afford store-bought desserts. They didn't know the truth. Nobody did. You see, Raymond and I had been smart with our money. Real smart. We'd bought property back in the 70s and 80s when you could still get good land cheap in certain neighborhoods. We invested in small businesses, helped young entrepreneurs get started, and watched our money grow quietly, steadily, like a tree nobody pays attention to until one day you look up and realize it's touching the sky. When Raymond died, he left me with more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But I kept living simply because that's who I was. I didn't need a big house or fancy cars. I had my church family at Greater Faith Baptist, my Tuesday afternoon book club with Shirley and Donna from the neighborhood, my garden, and my memories. I was content. But I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what my son had become. Quentin used to be a sweet boy. He'd sit with me in the kitchen after school, telling me about his day while I cooked dinner. He'd help his daddy fix the car on weekends, go to church every Sunday without complaint, and call me just to say he loved me. Then he met Candace. Now, I'm not one of those mothers who thinks no woman is good enough for her son. I tried to like Candace, I really did. She was beautiful, educated, came from a good family in Birmingham. But there was something cold in her eyes, something calculating. She looked at our modest house the first time Quentin brought her home, and I saw her nose wrinkle just a fraction, saw the way she touched things like she was afraid of catching something. They got married anyway, had 2 beautiful grandbabies, Amara and Zion, who I loved more than my own heartbeat. And slowly, over the years, I watched Candace change my son into someone I barely recognized. It started small. Quentin would cancel our Sunday dinners because Candace had made other plans. They'd show up late to family gatherings, if they showed up at all. Quentin stopped calling just to check on me. When I did see them, Candace would make little comments about my clothes, my house, my car. Nothing direct enough to call her out on, but sharp enough to sting. "Oh, you're wearing that sweater again? I thought you'd throw that out by now." "Mama Willa, you really should consider moving somewhere safer. This neighborhood is so declining." "Don't you get embarrassed driving that old car? Quentin says it barely runs." Quentin never defended me. He'd just look at his phone or change the subject. The worst part was how they acted around the kids. Amara was 10 now, Zion was 7, and both of them were being taught that Grandma Willa was someone to pity, someone to feel sorry for. "Don't expect expensive gifts from Grandma," I'd overheard Candace tell them last Christmas. "She can't afford nice things like we can." It broke my heart. But I kept quiet. I told myself they'd grow out of it, that maybe they were just going through something. I made excuses for my son because that's what mothers do. Then came the invitation to Christmas dinner this year. "Mama, we want you to come to our place for Christmas," Quentin said when he called in November. "Candace is doing this whole big thing, real fancy. We're inviting some of her colleagues from her law firm, some of my partners from the investment company. It'll be nice." Something in his voice made me uneasy, but I said yes. These were my grandbaby's holidays, and I wasn't going to miss them. I should have trusted my instincts. Quentin and Candace lived in a massive house in Bloomfield Hills, one of the wealthiest suburbs in Michigan. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a pool, a 3-car garage. Every time I pulled up in my old Corolla, I felt the weight of their judgment, but I held my head high. My daddy raised me to never be ashamed of honest living. Christmas Day. I arrived at noon like they'd asked. I'd made my famous sweet potato pie, my peach cobbler, and my special mac and cheese that Quentin used to beg for as a child. I'd also brought gifts for the kids, carefully chosen books and art supplies that I knew they'd love, even if they weren't expensive. Candace opened the door wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage used to be. Her smile was tight, forced. "Willa, you made it." Not Mama Willa or Hi Mom, just Willa. "Merry Christmas, baby," I said, holding up my dishes. "Where should I put these?" She looked at the aluminum foil-covered containers like I'd brought roadkill. "Oh, you cooked. That's sweet. Just put them in the kitchen. The caterers have already set up the main dishes, but I'm sure we can find somewhere to squeeze your things in." Caterers. Of course! I followed her into that showcase of a house. Everything was white and silver and crystal. A massive Christmas tree stood in the foyer, professionally decorated, not a strand of tinsel out of place. Nothing like the trees Raymond and I used to decorate with Quentin, covered in handmade ornaments and colored lights. The living room was full of people I didn't know. Men in expensive suits, women in cocktail dresses, everyone holding wine glasses and talking in those loud, performative voices people use when they're trying to impress each other. "Everyone, this is Quentin's mother, Willa," Candace announced. "She lives over in Detroit." The way she said Detroit made it sound like I lived in a war zone. A few people nodded politely and went back to their conversations. I wasn't part of their world, and they made that clear without saying a word. I found Quentin in the kitchen directing the caterers. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and designer jeans, his hair freshly cut, looking every bit the successful investment broker he'd become. "Hey, Mama," he said, giving me a quick, stiff hug. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, baby. Where are Amara and Zion?" "Upstairs playing video games. They'll come down for dinner." We stood there in awkward silence until Candace swept back in, already irritated about something. "The caterers forgot the truffle butter," she complained to Quentin. "Can you believe that? I specifically ordered truffle butter for the mashed potatoes." "I'm sure regular butter will be fine," Quentin said. Candace shot him a look that could freeze water. "Regular butter? For a Christmas dinner with the Harringtons and the Vanderbilts? Absolutely not." I bit my tongue. Truffle butter. Lord have mercy. Dinner was even worse than I imagined. They'd set up a long table in the dining room, and I ended up squeezed at the far end, next to a woman who spent the entire meal talking loudly about her vacation home in Aspen. Across from me sat a man who never looked up from his phone. Quentin and Candace held court at the other end, laughing and telling stories, playing the perfect power couple. My grandson Zion ran past at one point, and I tried to call him over, but Candace snapped her fingers at him. "Zion, we have guests. Go back upstairs." My baby looked at me with sad eyes and obeyed his mother. When it came time for dessert, the caterers brought out some elaborate chocolate creation that probably tasted like expensive air. Nobody touched my pie or cobbler, still sitting in the kitchen where I'd left them. Then came gift time. Quentin and Candace had gotten Amara and Zion everything a child could want. New iPads, designer clothes, expensive toys. The kids squealed with delight, and I was genuinely happy for them, even though I knew they'd be bored with half of it by New Year's. When Amara opened my gift, the art supply set I'd carefully chosen, Candace actually laughed. "Oh, how practical," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "That's very budget-friendly of you, Willa." Budget-friendly, like I should be ashamed. Zion opened his book about African-American inventors, something I'd thought he'd find inspiring, and before he could even react, Candace was already talking over him. "Well, that's thoughtful in its own way," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Not everyone can afford the latest technology. Some people have to work with what they have. The room went quiet for a moment. A few guests looked uncomfortable. Most just pretended not to notice. That's when Quentin joined in. "Yeah, Mama, you really didn't have to get them anything," he said, and I could hear Candace's words coming out of his mouth. "We know money's tight for you. You should be saving for yourself, not spending on gifts." Money's tight. Money's tight. Like I was some charity case. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this boy I'd sacrificed for, and I didn't recognize him anymore. But I still kept quiet. I smiled, nodded, and said, "I just wanted to show my grandbabies I was thinking of them." "Of course you did," Candace said, reaching over to pat my hand like I was a child. "That's very sweet. Very humble." Humble. The word landed like a slap. The party wound down around 8 o'clock. Guests started leaving, taking their expensive coats from the front closet, thanking Quentin and Candace for the absolutely divine evening. I helped clear some dishes, even though the caterers tried to wave me off, because I was raised to always help clean up. Finally, it was time for me to go. I gathered my empty dishes, hugged my grandbabies tight, and headed for the door. That's when it happened. "Mama, wait!" Quentin called out. He and Candace were standing by the Christmas tree, both of them with that same expression, that mixture of pity and superiority that I'd been swallowing all day. "Yes, baby?" "We were thinking," Candace said, stepping forward. "It's dark out, and that old car of yours, well, we just don't think it's safe for you to be driving back to Detroit at night, in that neighborhood." "I've been driving that route for 30 years, I said calmly. "I'll be just fine." "But Mama," Quentin jumped in, "your car barely runs. The heat doesn't work properly, does it? And the brakes make that noise. We're worried about you." I could see where this was going, but I let them continue. "So we were thinking we'd call you a car service," Candace said. "Nothing fancy, just something safe and warm to get you home. We'll pay for it, of course. Consider it our Christmas gift to you." The way she said it, like she was doing me this enormous favor, like I should be grateful for their generosity. "That's very thoughtful," I said slowly, "but I have my own car right outside." Candace laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Willa, that thing? Honestly, I'm surprised it made it here at all. Why don't you just accept our help for once? It's Christmas. Let us take care of you." Take care of me, like I was helpless, like I was nothing. Quentin nodded, already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling the car service now. They can be here in 20 minutes. You can leave your car here overnight, and maybe I'll have someone look at it tomorrow. Might be time to just move on from it, you know? Maybe we can help you find something more reliable at a used car lot. Something within your budget." Within my budget. Something inside me that had been bending finally snapped. I looked at my son, at this man who thought he knew everything about my life, who'd spent the entire day treating me like a burden, like someone to be pitied and managed. And I smiled. "You know what, baby? You're right," I said sweetly. "My old car is a bit much for tonight. I think I'll take a different ride home." Candace looked relieved. "Oh, good. The car service will be here soon, and—" "I'm not talking about a car service, sweetheart." They both frowned, confused. I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Hello, Gerald? Yes, it's Mrs. Mitchell. I'm ready for pickup. Yes, right now. The address is 1547 Woodland Drive, Bloomfield Hills. See you in 5 minutes." I hung up. "Who was that?" Quentin asked. "My ride," I said simply. And then I walked past them, past their confusion, past their perfectly decorated tree and their expensive everything, right out the front door into the cold December night. I stood on that lawn, my coat wrapped tight, waiting. Behind me, I heard the front door open. Quentin and Candace had followed me outside, probably thinking I'd lost my mind. "Mama, who did you call?" Quentin was asking. "Mama, Come back inside. It's cold. Mama! That's when they heard it. The sound started as a distant whirring, growing louder and louder until it filled the whole sky. Lights appeared above the trees, bright and unmistakable. Quentin's expensive neighbors started coming out of their houses, pointing up at the sky, and then it descended onto the lawn, powerful and magnificent and impossible to ignore. My helicopter, custom painted in midnight black with gold accents. Top of the line, bought and paid for just last week when I'd finally decided I was tired of playing small for people who couldn't see my worth. The blades whipped the cold air into a frenzy. The landing lights illuminated everything, turning that whole stuck-up neighborhood into a stage. Gerald, my pilot, gave me a thumbs up from the cockpit. I turned to look at my son one last time. His mouth was hanging open. Candace had actually stumbled backward, her face a mask of shock. "Mama," Quentin finally managed to choke out. "Mama, what is this?" I smiled at him, the same sweet smile I'd been giving him all day, the same patient smile I'd worn while they'd mocked me and pitied me and treated me like I was less than. "This," I said, raising my voice over the helicopter blades, "is my ride home, baby." But how? You don't have money?" I finished for him. "Is that what you were going to say, Quentin? That I don't have money?" I watched the truth dawn on him slowly, watched his whole worldview start to crack and crumble. "You see, baby, your daddy and I were very good with our finances. Very good. And when he passed, he left me comfortable. More than comfortable. But I kept living the way I always lived because I didn't need to prove anything to anybody. I was happy being simple, being humble. I let that word hang in the air. Being myself." Candace had tears running down her face now, but they weren't tears of joy or relief. They were tears of humiliation, of realization, of understanding that she'd been mocking someone who could buy and sell everything she owned without blinking. "But you know what?" I continued, walking toward the helicopter. "I'm tired of being treated like I'm less than. I'm tired of watching you teach my grandbabies to look down on people who don't flash their wealth around. I'm tired of being disrespected in my own family." "Mama, wait!" Quentin started toward me, but I held up my hand. "No, baby. You made your choice today. You chose to side with your wife while she humiliated me in front of strangers. You chose to offer me charity like I was some poor soul who needed saving. You chose to be embarrassed by my old car, my homemade food, my simple gifts." I reached the helicopter door, and Gerald opened it for me like the professional he was. "So I'll tell you what I'm going to do," I called back over the noise. "I'm going to go home to my house that I own outright. I'm going to think real hard about who deserves to be in my life and who doesn't. And I'm going to decide what happens with the money that you apparently thought you'd be inheriting someday." That last part made Quentin go pale. "Mama, please, I'm sorry, we didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I said softly but firmly. "You meant every word, every look, every judgment, and now you know the truth." I climbed into the helicopter, settled into my seat, and buckled up. Through the window I could see the whole neighborhood watching. I could see Quentin dropping to his knees on the lawn. I could see Candace standing there, frozen. And I could see little Amara's face in an upstairs window, her eyes wide with wonder. Gerald lifted us up into the night sky. And I watched Quentin's perfect house get smaller and smaller below me, until it was just another speck of light in a sea of expensive homes. I pulled out my phone and made another call. "Hello, Shirley?" "Yes, it's me. Listen, remember how you said you wanted to meet my lawyer friend, Patricia? Well, I think it's time we had that meeting. I need to make some changes to my will." The flight home took 12 minutes. 12 peaceful minutes where I floated above the city lights, above the traffic, above all the mess I'd just left behind. Gerald didn't try to make conversation, bless him. He knew when to give a person space to think. When we landed on the private helipad I'd had installed at Coleman Young Airport 3 months ago, my friend Shirley was already waiting with her car, right where I'd asked her to be. Shirley Washington had been my best friend for 47 years. We'd met at Greater Faith Baptist Church. When we were both young mothers, both struggling to make ends meet while our husbands worked double shifts. We'd raised our children together, buried our husbands within 2 years of each other, and held each other up through every storm life threw at us. Unlike me, Shirley had never hidden her money. When her husband Roy's construction company took off in the 90s, she bought herself a nice house in Palmer Woods, got a new car every 3 years, and wore her success proudly. But she never judged me for staying in my old neighborhood, never questioned my choices. "Girl," she said as I climbed into her warm Cadillac, "you really did it, didn't you?" "I really did it," I confirmed, suddenly feeling exhausted. "How do you feel?" I thought about it as we drove through the quiet streets. "Free," I finally said. "Tired, but free." Shirley reached over and squeezed my hand. "Good. That boy needed a wake-up call. Candace, too. The way they've been treating you. Raymond would be ashamed." That hit hard because it was true. My Raymond had loved Quentin with his whole heart, but he'd also been a man who believed in respect, in family, in treating people right no matter how much money you had or didn't have. "I called Patricia on the way," Shirley continued. "She said she can meet with us tomorrow morning at her office, 9 o'clock. Patricia Chen Morrison was one of the best estate lawyers in Michigan, and she happened to be a member of Greater Faith. She'd helped me set up my will 15 years ago, but it was time for some serious changes. "Thank you," I said quietly. "You know Quentin's going to call, right? Probably already has." I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, all from Quentin. I turned the phone off. "Let him wait," I said. Shirley smiled. "That's my girl." She dropped me off at my house, a modest 2-bedroom bungalow on a tree-lined street where I'd lived for 43 years. It wasn't fancy, but it was paid for, the roof was solid, and it was filled with memories of Raymond and the life we'd built. Inside, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in Raymond's old chair by the window. The house was quiet, peaceful. No judgmental looks, no snide comments, no pretending to be someone I wasn't. I thought about Amara and Zion, my grandbabies. They were the innocent ones in all this. They'd been taught to see me a certain way, but that wasn't their fault. They were just children being shaped by their parents' values. That's what hurt the most. Not what Quentin and Candace had done to me, but what they were doing to those babies. Teaching them that worth was measured in dollars, that simple people weren't worthy of respect, that family only mattered if they could benefit you somehow. I must have dozed off in that chair because the next thing I knew, morning light was streaming through the windows, and someone was knocking on my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Quentin standing on my porch, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. I opened the door but left the security chain on. "Mama," he said immediately, his voice rough. "Mama, please, can we talk?" "Talk?" I said through the gap. "Can I come inside?" "No." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Mama, please. I'm sorry. We're sorry. Candace and I, we didn't know." "Didn't know what, Quentin? Didn't know I had money? Or didn't know you should treat your mother with respect regardless?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. "Both," he finally admitted. "I mean, we thought you were struggling. We were trying to help." "Help?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Baby, mocking someone isn't helping them. Making them feel small isn't helping them. Teaching your children to pity their grandmother isn't helping." I know, and I'm so sorry. Candace is devastated. She's been crying all night." "Crying because she's sorry, or crying because she just found out I'm not the poor relation she thought she could look down on?" Quentin couldn't answer that, and his silence told me everything. "Where's your helicopter now?" he asked quietly. "At the airport where it belongs." "How long have you... I mean, when did I get rich?" I finished for him. "Baby, I've been comfortable since before you were born. Your daddy and I worked hard, invested smart, and built something real. We just never saw the need to show off about it. But you lived so simply. The old car, the small house, shopping at thrift stores." "That's called being wise with money, Quentin. That's called not needing to prove anything to anybody. Your daddy taught you that, but somewhere along the way, you forgot." He leaned against the doorframe, looking defeated. "What can I do to make this right, Mama?" "I don't know if you can," I said honestly. "You hurt me, baby. Not just yesterday, but for years. All those little comments, all those times you let Candace disrespect me, all those times you chose her side over treating your own mother with basic dignity. I'll talk to her. We'll do better. Please, Mama. The kids are asking about you. Amara keeps talking about the helicopter, about how cool Grandma is. She wants to see you." My heart ached at that. "And what did you tell her?" I told her Grandma had to go home, but we'd see her soon." "Did you tell her why I left?" He looked away. "No. Of course not. Because then you'd have to admit what you did." A car pulled up behind Quentin. It was Shirley, right on time to pick me up for our meeting with Patricia. "I have to go," I told Quentin. "I have an appointment." "An appointment? Mama, can we please just sit down and talk about this?" "We just did talk. And now I have other things to handle." I closed the door, grabbed my purse and coat, and walked out through the back door to where Shirley was waiting in the driveway. "Was that Quentin?" she asked as I got in. "Yep." "How'd it go?" "About like you'd expect." Patricia's office was in downtown Detroit, a beautiful renovated building with big windows overlooking the river. She greeted us with warm hugs and led us into her conference room. "Willa, I heard about Christmas dinner," she said, getting straight to business. "Shirley filled me in. I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "Thank you, Patricia. That's actually why I'm here. You want to change your will. I want to completely rewrite it." Patricia pulled out a legal pad and a pen. "Tell me what you're thinking." I took a deep breath. Right now, Quentin is set to inherit everything. The properties, the investments, the cash, everything. I want to change that. "Okay. What would you like to do instead?" "I want to set up trust funds for Amara and Zion. Protected trusts that Quentin and Candace can't touch until the kids turn 25. Enough to pay for their education, help them start their lives, but structured so their parents can't manipulate them into giving up the money." Patricia nodded, writing quickly. "That's smart. What else?" "I want to leave a substantial amount to Greater Faith Baptist Church. Pastor Williams has been talking about building a community center for years. I want to make that happen." "Beautiful," Patricia said. "And the rest?" "I want to set up a scholarship fund for single mothers going back to school. That's how I started, you know. Raymond worked while I went to night school to get my business degree. I want to help other women do the same." Shirley reached over and squeezed my hand. "What about Quentin?" Patricia asked gently. I was quiet for a long moment. "He gets enough to be comfortable, but not wealthy. Enough that he won't struggle, but not so much that he never has to think about money again. I want him to understand the value of what he has instead of taking it for granted." "And if he contests the will?" "Then he gets nothing," I said firmly. "Make that clear in the language. Any attempt to contest results in complete disinheritance." Patricia wrote for a few more minutes, then looked up at me. "Willa, I have to ask. Are you sure about this? Emotions are high right now. Maybe give it a few weeks, see if things calm down?" "Patricia, this isn't just about Christmas dinner. This is about years of disrespect, years of watching my son turn into someone I don't recognize, years of being treated like a burden instead of a blessing. I'm 72 years old. I'm tired of waiting for him to do better." "I understand. But legally, I need to make sure you're making this decision with a clear head, not just out of anger." "My head is crystal clear," I assured her. "I've been thinking about this for a long time. Christmas was just the final straw." We spent the next 2 hours going over details, numbers, legal language. By the time we finished, I felt lighter than I had in years. "I'll have the documents drawn up by the end of the week," Patricia said. "We'll need 2 witnesses for the signing. Are you comfortable with that?" "Shirley can be one," I said. "I'd be honored," Shirley confirmed. "And I'll ask Pastor Williams to be the other." Patricia walked us out to the parking garage. As we were saying goodbye, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Mrs. Mitchell? This is Amanda Brooks from Channel 7 News. We received a tip about an incident in Bloomfield Hills on Christmas Day involving a helicopter landing at a private residence. We understand you were involved. Would you be willing to comment?" My heart sank. Of course the press had gotten hold of the story. A helicopter landing in one of Michigan's wealthiest neighborhoods on Christmas Day? That was news. "No comment," I said, and hung up. "What was that?" Shirley asked. "News station. Somebody talked." "Probably one of Candace's fancy neighbors," Shirley muttered. "Those people love to gossip." My phone rang again. Another reporter, then another. I turned it off for the second time in 2 days. On the way back to my house, we stopped by Greater Faith for the Wednesday afternoon Bible study I never missed. As soon as I walked in, I was surrounded by my church family. Pastor Williams, a kind man in his 60s who'd been leading our congregation for 20 years, pulled me aside. "Sister Willa," he said gently, "I heard about what happened. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, Pastor. The Lord is giving me strength." "That's good to hear. And Quentin? Have you spoken with him?" "Briefly, this morning. He's not ready to hear what needs to be said yet." Pastor Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes our children have to walk their own path, even when it leads them away from us temporarily. Keep praying for him, but don't let his choices steal your peace." "Thank you, Pastor. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Could we meet privately after Bible study?" "Of course, sister." Bible study was exactly what I needed. We were studying the book of Job, about suffering and perseverance and keeping faith even when everything seems lost. The parallels weren't lost on me. Sister Agnes, who was 90 if she was a day, reached over and patted my hand during the discussion. "You're stronger than you know, baby girl," she whispered. "Don't you let nobody dim your light." After everyone left, Pastor Williams and I sat in his office. I told him everything: the years of disrespect, the Christmas dinner, the helicopter, my plans for my will. When I mentioned wanting to leave money to the church for the community center, tears filled his eyes. "Sister Willa, that's incredibly generous. But you don't have to do that, especially not now, not when you're dealing with family troubles." "Pastor, this isn't about obligation. It's about legacy. I want to leave something that matters, something that will help people long after I'm gone. This church raised me, raised my son, even if he's forgotten that. This community deserves something beautiful." "Then we'll use it wisely," he promised. "And I'll be honored to witness your new will." I got home just as the sun was setting. There was a car parked in front of my house. Not Quentin's BMW. This was a Mercedes SUV. Candace. She was sitting on my porch steps, wrapped in a coat that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. When she saw me, she stood up. "Willa," she said, "thank you for seeing me." "I didn't know you were coming." "I know. I'm sorry for just showing up, but you won't answer Quentin's calls, and I needed to talk to you." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. 5 minutes. Inside, Candace looked around my small living room like she was seeing it for the first time. Maybe she was really seeing it for the first time. "This is lovely," she said quietly. "So cozy." "What do you want, Candace?" She sat down on the edge of my couch, her hands clasped in her lap. "I want to apologize. Really apologize. What I said at Christmas. how I've been treating you. There's no excuse. You're right, there isn't. I was wrong about you, about everything, and I've been teaching Amara and Zion to be wrong about you too. Why? I asked. Why did you need to make me feel small? What did I ever do to you? Candace was quiet for a long moment. Because I was insecure, she finally admitted. You want the truth? I grew up poor, real poor. My family struggled, and I swore I'd never be like that again. I worked my way through law school, fought for everything I have, and when I met Quentin, he seemed like everything I wanted. Successful, ambitious, going places. And I reminded you of where you came from, I said, understanding dawning. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Every time I saw you in your simple clothes, your old car, your homemade gifts, I saw my mother, my grandmother, the life I ran away from. And instead of being grateful for how you survived, how you built something real, I wanted to distance myself from it, from you. So you mocked me. You taught my grandbabies to pity me. Yes, and I'm ashamed. Willa, I'm so deeply ashamed. I sat down in Raymond's chair, suddenly exhausted. Do you know what the saddest part is, Candace? If you'd just asked, if you'd ever shown genuine interest in my life, I would have told you my story. I would have shared how Raymond and I built our wealth. I could have been a mentor to you, a friend even. But you never asked. You just assumed. I know. And I've lost something precious because of my assumptions. I've lost your respect, maybe your love. Maybe, I agreed. But what hurts most is that you convinced Quentin to lose those things too. I'll fix it, she said desperately. I'll tell him he was wrong. I'll make him see. Candace, he's a grown man. He made his own choices. You influenced him, yes, but he chose to go along with it. He chose to disrespect his own mother. She stood up, wringing her hands. Please don't cut us out completely. Please. The kids love you. They need you. I love them too, but I need time to figure out what comes next. Are you? She hesitated. Are you changing your will? There it was. The real reason for the visit. That's none of your business, Candace. But Quentin said, Quentin can say whatever he wants. My finances, my decisions, my business. She looked panicked now. Willa, please, we can work this out. We're family. Family respects each other, I said, standing up and walking to the door. Your 5 minutes are up. After she left, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room and cried. Not for Quentin and Candace, but for the grandbabies who were caught in the middle. For the family dinners that might never happen again. For the simple, beautiful life I'd built that had somehow become a source of shame instead of pride. My phone buzzed. I'd turned it back on to check if Patricia had emailed any preliminary documents. But it wasn't Patricia. It was a text from a number I did recognize. Grandma, it's Amara. Mommy doesn't know I have her phone. Can you come over? I miss you. Please don't be mad at us. My heart broke into a million pieces. Before I could respond, another text came through. I'm sorry they were mean to you. You're the coolest grandma ever. Can I ride in your helicopter someday? I was typing a response when my landline rang. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. Willa Mitchell? An unfamiliar woman's voice asked. Yes? My name is Detective Sharon Morris with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling about a complaint that was filed this afternoon by Candace Hamilton. She's alleging that you've been engaging in financial exploitation and elder manipulation. I need to ask you a few questions. The room spun. Financial exploitation? Elder manipulation? I'm sorry, what? Mrs. Hamilton claims that you recently made a large, unusual purchase, specifically a helicopter, and that this purchase was made under duress or potential cognitive impairment. She's concerned that someone may be taking advantage of you financially and has requested a welfare check. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Candace had called the police on me? Detective Morris, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I am 72 years old, but I am in full possession of my faculties. I made that purchase with my own money, of sound mind, and I resent the implication that I'm not capable of making my own financial decisions. I understand, ma'am. This is just procedure. Would you be willing to meet with me tomorrow to clear this up? Just a brief conversation. Fine. What time? How about 10 o'clock at your residence? After I hung up, I called Shirley immediately. They're trying to say I'm incompetent, I told her. They're actually trying to take away my autonomy. That witch, Shirley breathed. That absolute witch. Don't worry, Willa. We'll handle this. I'm calling Patricia right now. As I sat there in the darkness, staring at Amara's sweet text message, I realized something. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. And Candace had just declared war. Detective Morris arrived at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning. She was a black woman in her 40s, professional and polite, and I could tell within the first 30 seconds that she didn't believe Candace's accusations for 1 second. Mrs. Mitchell, she said as I offered her tea in my living room, I appreciate you meeting with me. I have to follow up on these complaints, but between you and me, this feels like a family dispute, not a case of exploitation. That's because it is, I said firmly. My daughter-in-law is upset that I have money and she didn't know about it. Now she's trying to paint me as some confused old woman who can't make her own decisions. Detective Morris reviewed her notes. You purchased a helicopter last week for $2.3 million, correct? I did. From my own accounts. Money my husband and I earned and invested over 50 years of marriage. And you have documentation of these funds? Every single penny is documented and legal. I can have my financial advisor send over statements if you need them. That won't be necessary. Mrs. Hamilton also mentioned concerns about your living conditions, but she looked around my clean, well-maintained home. I don't see any issues here. Because there aren't any. Detective Morris closed her notebook. Mrs. Mitchell, in my professional opinion, you are clearly of sound mind and capable of making your own financial decisions. I'll file my report saying as much. If Mrs. Hamilton continues to make false claims, you may want to consider speaking with an attorney about harassment. After she left, I called Patricia. They're trying to have me declared incompetent, I told her. What else can they do? Not much, legally. But Willa, this is escalating. I think we need to be proactive. How would you feel about filing for a restraining order? Against my own son? Against Candace, at minimum. She's harassing you, filing false reports, and it's only going to get worse if you don't set boundaries. I thought about Amara's text. About those grandbabies who I loved more than anything. If I do that, I might never see my grandchildren again. And if you don't, Candace will keep trying to control you through fear and manipulation. You have to protect yourself, Willa. She was right. I knew she was right. Let me think about it, I said. That afternoon, I had another visitor. This time it was someone I didn't expect. Quentin's younger brother, my nephew Jerome. Jerome had always been like a second son to me. When his parents died in a car accident when he was 16, Raymond and I took him in and raised him alongside Quentin. The two boys had been close as brothers, but they'd drifted apart over the years, especially after Jerome decided to become a teacher instead of chasing corporate success like Quentin. Auntie Willa, he said, pulling me into a warm hug. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. How did you find out? Quentin called me, crying, begging me to talk to you to make you change your mind about whatever you're planning. And what did you tell him? Jerome smiled sadly. I told him he made his bed and now he has to lie in it. But I wanted to come check on you myself. Make sure you were okay. We sat on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, just like we used to do when he was a teenager and needed to talk about life. I should have stood up for you years ago, Jerome said. I saw how Candace treated you, how Quentin went along with it. I should have said something. Baby, That wasn't your battle to fight. But your family. You raised me. You loved me when I had nobody else. I owed you better than silence. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Auntie, what are you going to do? About the will, I mean. Quentin is terrified. Good. He should be. Maybe terror will wake him up to what he's lost. Jerome was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? About Quentin? Of course. He's not happy. Hasn't been for years. That big house, the fancy job, Candace's social climbing, all of it. He's miserable. I think he's been trying to convince himself that money and status equal success. But deep down, he knows he's lost something important. He's lost himself, I said quietly. Yeah, and now he's lost you too, and I think that's finally making him see what really matters. It's too late for apologies, Jerome. Not after what Candace did yesterday with the police. Jerome's eyes widened. What did she do? I told him about the detective, the accusations, the attempt to have me declared incompetent. That's insane, he breathed. Auntie, you need to protect yourself, legally. That's what Patricia says. Then do it. File whatever paperwork you need to file. Set boundaries. And if Quentin can't respect those boundaries, then he doesn't deserve to be in your life. That evening, I called Patricia and told her to proceed with the restraining order against Candace. I also asked her to draft a formal cease and desist letter to Quentin, making it clear that any further harassment would result in legal action. You're doing the right thing, Patricia assured me. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I kept expecting Quentin to show up, but he didn't. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then, 5 days after Christmas, I got a call from Pastor Williams. Sister Willa, can you come down to the church? There's someone here who wants to speak with you. Who? Just trust me, please. When I arrived at Greater Faith, Pastor Williams led me to a small meeting room. Inside sat Amara and Zion, with Jerome standing protectively behind them. Jerome brought them, Pastor Williams explained. He has them for the afternoon. The children asked to see you. My heart swelled. I rushed forward and pulled both grandbabies into my arms, holding them tight. Grandma, Amara said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't stick up for you at Christmas. Baby, that wasn't your responsibility. But we should have said something, Zion added, his little voice serious. You always make us the best food and give us good presents, and we love you so much. I was crying now, couldn't help it. I love you too, babies, so much. Is it true you have a helicopter? Zion asked, his eyes wide. I laughed through my tears. Yes, baby, it's true. That's so cool. Can we ride in it sometime? Maybe someday, when things calm down. Why is Mom so mad at you? Amara asked. She's been crying a lot, and she and Dad keep fighting. I looked at Jerome over their heads. He nodded slightly, giving me permission to be honest. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, I said carefully. Your mom and dad made some choices that hurt my feelings, and now we're all trying to figure out how to fix things. But you're not going to disappear, right? Amara's voice was small, scared. You're still our grandma? Always. Baby, I will always be your grandma. Nothing can change that. We spent an hour together playing games, talking, laughing. It was exactly what my soul needed. When Jerome took them home, Pastor Williams and I sat together in the sanctuary. Those children love you, he said. I know. That's what makes this so hard. Have you prayed about what to do next? Every single day. And what is the Lord telling you? I thought about that. He's telling me that love doesn't mean letting people disrespect you, that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse, that I can love my son and my grandbabies while still protecting my peace. Pastor Williams smiled. Then you have your answer. 2 weeks after Christmas, I was served with legal papers. Quentin and Candace were suing me for undue influence over myself and demanding that a court-appointed guardian be assigned to manage my finances. They were claiming I was being manipulated by outside parties and that my recent behavior, including the helicopter purchase, was evidence of diminished capacity. Patricia was furious when I showed her the papers. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she said, "and it's going to backfire on them spectacularly. But Willa, we need to take this seriously. We need to fight back hard." "What do you recommend?" "We file a countersuit for harassment and defamation. We get your doctor to provide a cognitive assessment, proving you're perfectly competent. We bring in your financial advisor to show your purchase history and demonstrate that the helicopter was a reasonable expense given your net worth. And we make them look like the greedy, manipulative people they are." "When's the hearing?" 3 weeks from now." Those 3 weeks were the longest of my life. My church family rallied around me. Shirley practically moved into my house to keep me company. Jerome visited every other day, sometimes bringing the kids. And I prepared. Patricia had me undergo a full cognitive assessment with a neuropsychologist, who declared me sharper than most 40-year-olds. My financial advisor, Marcus Thompson, compiled a detailed report showing my investment history, my net worth, and evidence that the helicopter purchase represented less than 5% of my liquid assets. We also gathered character witnesses: Pastor Williams, Sister Agnes, members of my book club, neighbors who'd known me for decades, all ready to testify that I was of sound mind and had been for as long as they'd known me. The day of the hearing arrived cold and gray. Patricia picked me up at 7 in the morning, both of us dressed professionally. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for Raymond's funeral and had barely worn since. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways, but I held my head high. In the courtroom, I saw Quentin and Candace sitting with their lawyer, an expensive-looking man in a 3-piece suit. Quentin looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in weeks. Candace looked determined, almost desperate. Behind them sat Candace's parents, both looking uncomfortable. But behind me sat Shirley, Jerome, Pastor Williams, Sister Agnes, and at least 15 other members of Greater Faith, filling 3 full rows. The judge was an older black woman named Judge Harriet Freeman. She reviewed the documents with a stern expression. "Mr. Hamilton, Mrs. Hamilton," she said, addressing Quentin and Candace, "you're asking this court to appoint a guardian for Mrs. Mitchell based on claims of diminished capacity. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," their lawyer said. "And what evidence do you have of this diminished capacity?" "Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell recently purchased a helicopter for over $2 million. This is a radical departure from her previous lifestyle and spending patterns. We believe she's being influenced by individuals who are taking advantage of her." Judge Freeman looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Mitchell, did you purchase a helicopter?" "Yes, Your Honor, I did." "Why?" "Because I wanted one, Your Honor, and because I could afford it." A ripple of laughter went through the courtroom. "Mrs. Mitchell, how would you describe your financial situation?" "Comfortable, Your Honor. My late husband and I made sound investments over 50 years. We own multiple properties, have diverse investment portfolios, and substantial savings. The helicopter purchase represented a small percentage of my liquid assets." "Do you have documentation of this?" Patricia stood and submitted Marcus Thompson's report. Judge Freeman reviewed it, her eyebrows rising. "Mrs. Mitchell, according to this, your net worth is approximately $48 million. "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom went silent. I heard Candace gasp. "And the helicopter cost $2.3 million? "Yes, Your Honor." "So roughly 5% of your total net worth?" "Closer to 4%, Your Honor." Judge Freeman looked at Quentin and Candace. "Mr. Hamilton, were you aware of your mother's financial status?" Quentin stood slowly. "No, Your Honor. I thought she was struggling financially." "Based on what evidence?" She lives simply, drives an old car, shops at thrift stores. And from those observations, you concluded she was poor? Yes, Your Honor. Did it occur to you that she might simply be frugal? That living below one's means is actually a sign of financial wisdom, not poverty? Quentin had no answer. Judge Freeman continued. I've reviewed the cognitive assessment performed by Dr. Rachel Okonkwo. Mrs. Mitchell scored in the superior range for her age group in all categories. I've read statements from her pastor, her neighbors, her friends, all attesting to her mental acuity and independence. I've examined her financial records, which show a pattern of careful, intelligent money management spanning decades. She looked at Quentin and Candace with clear disdain. What I see here is not a vulnerable elderly woman being taken advantage of. What I see is a competent, intelligent woman who made a lifestyle choice that surprised her family. A family that, frankly, seems more concerned about their inheritance than her well-being. Your Honor, Candace's lawyer tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. Mrs. Hamilton, I see here that you filed a police report claiming your mother-in-law was being exploited. That report was investigated and found to be without merit. I also see that you've been contacting Mrs. Mitchell repeatedly despite her requests for space. This appears to be harassment, not concern. Candace's face had gone white. This petition is denied, Judge Freeman declared. Mrs. Mitchell is clearly competent to manage her own affairs. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order against Mrs. Hamilton. You are to have no contact with Mrs. Mitchell for a period of 6 months, at which point we can review the situation. Your Honor, what about the children? Quentin asked desperately. That's between you and your mother to work out. But Mrs. Hamilton is not to be involved in those arrangements. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Patricia squeezed my hand. Behind me, my church family erupted in quiet celebration. I looked at Quentin. He was crying, his head in his hands. Candace looked furious, humiliated, and I felt free. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Apparently, the story of the helicopter grandmother had made the news. Mrs. Mitchell, how do you feel about the judge's decision? I stopped, looked directly at the cameras, and smiled. I feel grateful that the court recognized my right to live my life as I see fit. I worked hard for everything I have. My husband and I built our wealth through sacrifice and smart choices, and I won't apologize for that to anyone. What about your son? I love my son. I always will. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. I hope he learns from this experience. Will you reconcile with your family? Time will tell, but any reconciliation will be on my terms, with my boundaries respected. I'm done making myself small to make other people comfortable. That night, my phone rang. It was Quentin. Mama, he said, his voice broken. Mama, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, baby. I was wrong about everything. About you, about what matters, about who I've become. Candace and I, we're separating. She's moving out. I wasn't surprised. How are the kids? Confused, scared. They want to see you. Jerome can bring them by this weekend. Thank you. Mama, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to earn it. However long it takes, I want to be the son you raised me to be. Then start by being honest with your children. Tell them what happened. Tell them why it was wrong. Teach them to value people over money, character over status. Can you do that? Yes, Mama. I promise. 3 months later, I stood in front of Greater Faith Baptist Church at the groundbreaking ceremony for the new community center. The architect's rendering showed a beautiful building with classrooms, a gym, a commercial kitchen, meeting spaces, and a library. This center will serve our community for generations, Pastor Williams announced. Thanks to the extraordinary generosity of Sister Willa Mitchell, we can provide after-school programs, job training, senior services, and so much more. The crowd applauded. Amara and Zion stood beside me, holding the ceremonial shovels. They'd been spending every Saturday with me, and slowly, carefully, we were rebuilding what had been broken. Quentin stood in the back of the crowd. We weren't fully reconciled yet, but we were talking. He'd started therapy. He'd downsized to a smaller house. He was learning, slowly, what really mattered. Candace was out of the picture. The restraining order had been extended, and last I heard, she'd moved back to Birmingham. "Grandma," Amara whispered as we posed for photos. "Thank you for not giving up on us." "Baby girl, I could never give up on you. Never." That evening, Shirley and I sat on my porch, watching the sunset. "You did it," she said. "You got your peace back." I did. And you know what the funny thing is? What? I never needed that helicopter to prove anything. But buying it? That was me finally saying I matter. My choices matter. My life matters. And I don't need anyone's permission to live it fully. Amen to that, sister. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerome. The scholarship fund just received its first 10 applications. All strong candidates. Your legacy is already changing lives. I smiled and looked up at the darkening sky where, somewhere, stars were beginning to appear. Raymond would be proud. Not of the money or the helicopter or even the legal victory. He'd be proud that I finally remembered my worth. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.